Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, November 9th, 2016. I pre-recorded this show to celebrate the great... all right. We didn't do it. What a day. What an evening it has been. Did you sleep? A lot of you probably didn't. Here we are. I don't know who has the harder job today. Is it me trying to... do I even try to be upbeat? Find a way to discuss this without shutting the whole thing down and jumping out the window? I don't live in a very tall building, so it's not going to work. Or is it Greg Dworkin who has to come on here and answer for the pollsters? I guess. I mean, we don't get to throw anything at him or hit him or anything. And he's not a pollster. He just reads the polls. But wow, what a weird situation we find ourselves in. We haven't been shut down yet. I guess I put nothing past the new Trump administration. Of course, they're not in office yet. I got my worries, to be sure, just like all of the rest of you, and we'll share in some of those. I am hoping for a quiet day on all fronts today. I don't know. I meant to check last night. I was a little afraid that there might be some celebratory gun fail to look for, but it hasn't jumped out and shown itself to me yet, but I have yet to search for it. I guess, like many of you, I will be looking for ways to cope with things and things to throw myself into now that the election is over. Gun fail may be one of those things. It's about time to catch up on that anyway. It fell by the wayside in the final stretch of the election. We have some catching up to do and some totaling to do, of course, coming towards the end of the year, so it might be a good time to sum up that way. We'll round up what we can from the internets until they shut those down too. Here's a good comment I just thought we'd throw in there. Timothy Murphy, who writes for Mother Jones, had an interesting comment. You may have seen these results. I'm sure you were parsing the results as closely as anybody, trying to come up with anything, either to explain what happened or find some speck of good news somewhere. And there were some, one of which, believe it or not, was in West Virginia, where a Democrat held on to win the governorship. And Tim Murphy asks, you might look at West Virginia and ask, wow, a Democrat won. What's his secret? Unfortunately, the answer is his secret is he's a billionaire golf course and casino owner. So great night for billionaire or apparent billionaire golf course and casino owners. Well, look. We got a pile of bad news, a pile of awful things that we can say about Donald Trump for a while anyway. It's possible that that may become outlawed at some point. So save your archives, and you can listen to them underground in the future. I wish I was kidding entirely. And I don't know. I mean, really all there is to do is comb through the wreckage and decide what we think does and doesn't mean anything. Let me start this way. It's as good as any. I mean, I've certainly still got a pocket full of articles to read through. But I've got one that Michael Musson shared with me early this morning. Perhaps he sent it late last night. I didn't get it until early this morning. I went to bed pretty late, so it's probably early this morning. Not a source I've gone to before, but I thought I would share with you, because I only skimmed through the first half of it, and I kind of did feel like, okay, there is something here. And this may be a starting point. I don't know if it explains everything. But the source this time is, I guess, a blog, Slate Star Codex. I do not know what that is. It's slatestarcodex.com. The writer here is a guy by the name of Scott Alexander. I probably should have spent some time looking into what is this blog. Open threads at the Open Thread tab every Sunday and Wednesday, I'm told. So somebody's blog. Anyway, they did a good job with this one. It's worth considering. It won't be the be-all, end-all, but nothing is. Tuesdays shouldn't change the narrative. And this was written, by the way, this is important to note, November 7th, 2016. So pre-election, when we all still thought, right? 538, of course, that's going to come up today, predicts Hillary has a 65% chance of winning the election to Trump's 35%. And by the way, I didn't jump into the 538 wars early on. It was, but I did mention something on Twitter a few days ago. Still feel this way. It was then and it is now okay with me. 538 gets a different number. They're dedicated to their model. The number says it's going to be this, and you got to stand by it for good or for ill. And of course, as we're reminded in Greg's analogy to weather prediction, somebody who says that Clinton has a 95% chance and somebody who says Clinton has a 65% chance. If Clinton wins, they're both quote-unquote right. So what do? Now, if Clinton loses, they're both wrong. And I don't know. If you really feel like combing things over enough to be able to say, well, he said 65 and he said 95. 65 is less wrong than 95. I don't know what it tells you. Anyway, on with this. Let's get back to the thing that I thought was somewhat encouraging. 538 predicts Hillary has a 65% chance of winning, right? To Trump's 35. The New York Times says it's more like 84% Hillary and 16% Trump. Of course, we all heard Sam Wang, 99%. Both sites agree both candidates will get somewhere between 40 and 50% of the popular vote, and that Hillary seems to lead Trump by 3%. The smart money, this is all a lot funnier earlier, is on Hillary, but at this point, either major candidate could win. Now, the real surprise would have been had Gary Johnson or Jill Stein won, but that didn't happen. So the pollsters were right. Don't get down on them. Lots of things can happen tomorrow. Scott Alexander continues, maybe it rains in Philadelphia. It didn't, but it could have. That city's racially diverse and left-leaning voters stay home, and Pennsylvania goes for Trump, winning him the election. Maybe there's a really good get-out-the-vote campaign among Hispanics, and Florida ends up being Trump 48, Hillary 52, instead of the projected Trump 52, Hillary 48. Maybe the Department of Agriculture announces that Hillary is under investigation for bringing exotic weevil species into the U.S., and the population turns against her en masse. And I'm worried that someone is going to confuse this kind of stuff with deep insight into the state of the country. Hang on here. Let me bring Greg. And we'll just take it and interrupt for a minute. Good morning, Greg. How are you? I don't hear you. Why is that? Donald Trump has stolen your audio, Greg. You want to try to connect and disconnect and reconnect. How about that? Okay. So he's stolen your voice. Do I continue with this article? I will. In June 2016, John Weiner of The Nation wrote, "Relax, Donald Trump can't win," about how the media is incentivized to make races look competitive, but an understanding of political fundamentals proved that there was no way for Trump to actually make it. On the other hand...
Any better?
Yes, that is better. Thank you very much. Hang on just a second. I'll just wrap this bit up here. On the other hand, a few days ago, Scott Adams reiterated his long-standing prediction of a 98% chance Trump wins in a landslide. That's quite annoying. I'm worried that one of these two things will happen on Wednesday. Either Hillary wins and everybody agrees that John Weiner and various other people like him were right, that the fundamentals made a Trump win impossible, that Trump was a random clown who never had a chance anyway, that the people who warned us to beware of Trump were crying wolf, that this proves that nationalism is a spent force in politics, etc. Or Trump wins and everybody agrees that Scott Adams was a genius, that Weiner was an idiot, that Trump is a brilliant master persuader, that this proves that the 21st century will be a century of renewed nationalist power, that the white working class is sexist, that elites need to realize the precariousness of their position within a democratic system, or whatever. Imagine that the deciding factor really is a rainstorm in Philadelphia. There was a rainstorm in Philly, therefore nationalism is one of the great motivating forces in human affairs. It was a clear sunny day in Philly, and therefore nationalism doesn't matter anymore. The difference between nationalism being all-powerful and irrelevant is whether there was a cold front over the mid-Atlantic region. But with a race this close, any deciding factor is going to be about as random as a rainstorm over Philadelphia. maybe the pollsters made some kind of big mistake and missed shy Trump voters, and the vote goes Trump 47 and Hillary 45 instead of the predicted Hillary 47, Trump 45. So what? The difference between a proof of nationalism's vigor versus proof of its impotence, in which a candidate gets 47 versus 45%? Really? Now, there is more, but of course we have Greg standing by, so why not interrupt? We'll head back to that a little bit later. Maybe we can even comment on what we've heard so far. But, Greg, I was wondering at the opening of the show, who has the tougher job? Me finding something to at least chuckle about, or you having to explain what the hell with the polls?
Well, it's difficult either way. I don't think this is like one of the most fun mornings we've ever had.
It's like 47% my hard job, 45% yours, or maybe the other way.
Well, Seth Maskett, who is a political scientist, had this tweet this morning. I think pretty well summed it up. Mm-hmm. Question: what happened? Answer: we misunderstood how people would vote.
Oh.
How did that happen? We asked people how they were going to vote.
Huh. Yeah, that's problematic right there in the methodology.
Right. So we didn't get the right answers from asking people, and so all the polls were pretty much wrong. And it turns out that it wasn't a landslide for Trump. Actually, as it happens, the presidential election numbers actually suggest that Hillary Clinton got the popular vote. Right now, she's leading the popular vote. She's not going to be president. He is. But she's leading the popular vote, 59,215,000 to 59,062, more to come in from the West Coast. So by a hair, she will have won the popular vote. And just as you were talking about in terms of, well, what does this all mean on the grand scale? Does that mean everybody hates her? No, she won the popular vote. But doesn't everybody hate her? Well, she didn't win, so I suppose. And besides, some people who didn't want to vote for her definitely hate her.
Yes.
So does that mean, what is that? Well, actually, it's complicated is what it means. But
most things usually are.
Let me just run through, at least as far as this writing at the moment, an idea just, in terms of where things are at and how things were close.
Okay.
The states that mattered and wind up deciding the election. Michigan, Republicans 48 and Democrats 47. Okay. Pennsylvania, Republicans 49, Democrats 48. Wisconsin, Republicans 48, Democrats 47. Florida, Republicans 49, Democrats 48. Do you see a pattern here?
Yes.
I mean, these four states, Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, actually 5 states, Wisconsin, and Florida, each of them were the key to who won and who didn't win, and each of them is a 1 percentage point win for Trump.
Yeah.
So it really was a very, very close race. And Clinton wins the popular vote and winds up losing the Electoral College. And then disaster ensues, and the disaster is huge and not to be sugarcoated in any way. But very, very close election. Further, the percentage that Trump got is going to be not enormous. I mean, this is no landslide. Scott Adams is right that he won. But no.
It's just funny to think about having to say. It's okay.
Well, you have to say Bill Mitchell was right. You have to say.
Well, yeah. I don't know. Scott Adams is somehow funny.
13 keys, still is unbroken.
Yeah. I mean, a lot. That's, I guess, the most annoying part to me. I haven't given a great deal of thought to it yet because that's the most depressing and annoying part is the people who are right, which is kind of why I like this other article. It's, being right is, largely a matter of some kind of weird luck. And I mean, it's not going to help when you try to say, well, you don't get to use that power because it was just luck. They do. But
that's how it goes. The fact is that Trump is going to wind up being the next president. So there's a fellow named Brad Heath who has done some fantastic chart work in terms of trying to break this down and helping us understand it. And, of course, we do have a little bit about information from the exit polls. Polls, you say, they were all wrong. Why should we believe exit polls?
True.
Because exit polls give us a very good idea of at least answers to the questions that they asked. And if it's a close answer, 48-49, then, it's not necessarily definitive. But if something comes in, bigly on one side versus the other, then it does matter. So here, for example, some of the data we do know when you break it down and try to look real close. Trump won a 2-1 victory in counties where the unemployment rate had improved the most since 2010. Did you expect that?
The unemployment rate had improved the most.
Yes. That's the first chart I have for you on the Skype list.
So economic anxiety.
Well, yeah, it doesn't sound like economic anxiety, does it?
No, but it never did. Okay.
Right. Trump's support in counties with the highest non-white population dropped to 30%, a modern low. But that didn't lead to any gains for Clinton.
Okay.
So where people are distributed matters a lot, and, frankly, that's how you can win the popular vote and lose the Electoral College.
Yes.
That's how gerrymandering works.
Yeah.
You can take, a mythical, because I don't have the exact numbers and maps in front of me, but take a place like Illinois and put everybody in Chicago and then make up a whole bunch of small or rural counties and give each county a vote. And Chicago will outnumber vastly every other county. But the number of counties is greater than Chicago.
Yeah.
So if you put all of the Clinton voters in places that don't necessarily fan out across the country, she doesn't get the votes in the places she wants, which is a different way of saying that the Obama coalition and the Clinton coalition weren't quite the same thing.
No.
The Rust Belt went a lot deeper red this year. He's got a nice chart where dark colors showing shifts in the places actually that turned out that mattered, which is to say places like Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
And they decided the election. But at the same time, if you look at race and gender, there's no question there is what some folks have called a white lash here. White men went for Trump 63-31. White women went for Trump 52-43. Black men, black women, Latino men, Latino women, and others went for Clinton anywhere between 61 and 93%. Black women, of course, and always being her strongest group. But there are, in this country, more white people than people of color. True. And so that's how that broke down. And even if you look at it in terms of, Clinton getting 52-43 with white women, again, it's the distribution of where they are. And so those very white rural counties wound up counting a lot. So in a lot of ways, and we've talked about this, remember that Cracked article that we went over? In terms of looking at rural areas.
Yeah.
There's another excellent piece that was in, I think, the Washington Post, which was also looking at politics of resentment, which is, I think, what we saw today. And I think it's worth going over. This is by Jeff Guo, G-U-O. And it's called The New Theory for Why Trump Voters Are So Angry That Actually Makes Sense.
No.
As opposed to some of the other ones.
We'll see.
So there's been a great thirst in this election cycle for insight into the psychology of Trump voters. J.D. Vance's memoir, Hillbilly Elegy, offers a narrative about broken families and social decay. We've talked about that. We talked about that with Chris Arnott. There's a lack of agency here, feeling you have little control over your life, and a willingness to blame everybody but yourself, he writes.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the other parts of it of just feeling that it's the straightforward, economic anxiety. There's sociologist Arlie Hochschild talks about perceived betrayal. White voters feel the American dream is drifting out of reach for them, and they're angry because they believe minorities and immigrants have butted in line.
Aha.
Talked about that as well. I think we actually covered that article. That if you feel that if you play by the rules, you should also be able to, get ahead, and then you see other people, in quotes, getting ahead of you, that leads to resentment. We've talked about that on the show as well. But this is a book that they cover here by Kathy Kramer, and they talk about, actually the book is called The Politics of Resentment, and offers what's described in the article as a third perspective. Through her repeated interviews with the people of rural Wisconsin, she shows how politics have increasingly become a matter of personal identity. Just about all of her subjects feel a deep sense of bitterness toward elites and city dwellers. Again, this gets back to that Cracked article. Mm-hmm. Feel tread on, disrespected, and cheated out of what they felt they deserved. Kramer argues this rural consciousness is key to understanding which political arguments ring true. For example, most rural Wisconsinites supported the Tea Party's quest to shrink government, not out of any belief in the virtues of small government, because they didn't trust the government to help people like them. Mm-hmm. And that's where stuff like Obamacare comes in. How is Obamacare helping people like them? Support for less government among lower-income people is often derided as the opinions of people who have been duped. But listening into these conversations, it's hard to conclude that the people I studied believe what they do because they've been hoodwinked. Their views are rooted in identities and values as well as in economic perceptions, and the things are all intertwined. Now, rural voters, they point out, are not exactly the same thing as Trump voters. But many have pointed out that American politics have become increasingly tribal. Well, you've heard that before.
Yes, sure.
Kramer takes that idea a step further, showing how these tribal identities shape our perspectives on reality. It isn't enough to say that Trump voters were angry. Kramer shows that there are nuances to political range. To understand Trump's success, she argues, you have to understand how he tapped into people's sense of self. So, for example, people would complain they weren't getting their fair share of stuff. They weren't getting their fair share of public resources. That came up in perceptions of taxation, which is why they don't like taxation. And people had the sense that all the money is sucked in by Madison, Wisconsin, but never spent on places like theirs.
Uh-huh.
And then the sense of not getting respect.
Yes.
So the Great Recession didn't help. But part of it, from her perspective, is that the Republican Party over the years has honed its arguments to tap into the resentment. And that's one of the things that Trump did very well. And, if it weren't so horrible, you'd have to give him, quote, credit, end quote, for it. Because they say, you're right, you're not getting your fair share. The problem is it's all going into the government, so let's roll government back. So a little bit of an elite-driven effect where people are told to be upset. You're right to be upset. You're right to notice the injustice. Take it out on the government. Yeah. And then you mix in the first African-American president, and that's how you get a white lash. It's all tied in together.
I can see that.
They talk about not just resentment of people toward color, but resentment toward elites and city people, which, by the way, in their minds are intertwined.
Yes.
And a lot of the racial stereotypes carry this notion of laziness. So they make judgments about people who work hard. Oftentimes people of color don't fare that well in the judgment. But it's not just people of color. It's like, are you sitting behind a desk all day? That's not hard work. Hard work is somebody like me. I'm a logger. I get up at 4:30 and break my back. And that's hard work.
Yeah.
So the people who feel that way voted. Yeah. And they outvoted us by 1 percentage point in certain states that matter the most.
Yep. Does this mean logging gets easier?
Logging is difficult. Coal mining is difficult. Those jobs are disappearing in some respects. And the thing is, Trump has promised to change things. So one of the things we learned from the exit polls, and one of the more frustrating, is which candidate quality mattered the most? Cares about people like me. Clinton wins that one 58% to 35%. That's 15% of voters. Has the right experience. Clinton wins 90 to 8. That's 21% of people.
Whatever.
Good judgment, 20%. That's 66% Clinton, 26% Trump. Okay, but one more quality mattered more than any other, and that can bring change, 39%. And that's 14 Clinton and Trump 83.
Okay, well.
So he presented himself as the change agent. Change was the thing that people said mattered most in a candidate, not the right experience, not good judgment, not cares about me. And so wound up a lot of them voting for Trump.
Well, it will change.
Yeah. We have, let's see here, another couple in that same category. When did you decide the presidential vote? This one is certainly irking. In the last week, 13%, 47 for Trump and Clinton, 42. Those people who decided in the last week. Before that, 85%, 49% Clinton, 47% Trump.
Okay.
And if you break it down in September, October last week, in the last few days, all of those categories wound up breaking for Trump. Before September, it was 52-45 Clinton. Mm-hmm. That's only 60% of people.
Right.
So if you're looking for a Comey effect, you might find it there.
Oh, yes.
That bit of stuff might really have mattered enough to, again, make that 1 percentage point in those states.
I guess so, or at least firm up people who were never in Hillary's camp but weren't sure they were going to come out at all because they didn't love Trump necessarily. I guess there's certainly going to be there's enough voters out there that there's a significant number who said, yeah, I think I'll punish her for this.
So again, you look at issues. We held our own on the issues. That really wasn't the issue. Effective international trade, for example, creates U.S. jobs. 38% say takes away U.S. jobs. 42% say not that different. 11% say so. Kind of a split there. A view of U.S. wall along the entire Mexican border. 31% support. 54% opposed.
Okay.
Illegal immigrants working in the U.S. should be offered legal status. 70% say yes.
All right.
25% say deported to the home country. So those weren't the driving issues.
Oh.
Right? If you cared about the Supreme Court, you went for Trump 56-41. That's something Democrats never press enough. What about really? Obamacare? Because I've heard that, it's all about the Obamacare stuff. Well, if you felt that it went too far, that's 47% of the population. If it didn't go far enough or was about right, that was 48% of the population. So again, in terms of the issues itself, kind of a split. The main thing is that people who wanted change were the biggest factor. They voted for Trump. And white people and people of color voted completely differently on this. Yes. And that wound up giving us what, in my view, is a completely, totally horrible result.
Yeah. Well, we do have that result. So, all right. Well, now we know a little bit about what people were thinking in terms of the issues. Are we stuck on the horse race polling question with just, hey, we didn't ask the right people, they didn't tell us the right answers, they don't have phones? How many state polls were completely off the mark? In a lot of places
there were a couple of important ones that were completely off the mark, and I would say, the gold standard that we all talk about is the MU law poll for Wisconsin, which gave Clinton a 6-point lead, and she lost by 1 point. So that was a polling failure.
And that's 7. That's a 7-point swing. That's usually bigger than the margin of error, isn't it?
Yep. Oh. So that was it's 6 points considered the margin of error for a lead, and that's just outside it. Michigan is tough to poll. Everybody knew the polls were getting tighter. Pennsylvania was one where the polling lead was about 4 points. So if you're looking at the actual numbers, there weren't that many states that just completely and totally failed, although arguably Wisconsin was one of them. Everybody said Florida was going to be close. Florida was close. Everybody said North Carolina was going to be close, at least in the latest polls. And North Carolina was close. So those were correct. And then others were pretty big misses.
Yeah, I guess in the days to come we'll see some more digestion of, which ones were the biggest failures and I guess ranked. Then I assume we'll have, like we did after the last election, who's, I guess, who gets the dubious honor of being most accurate in all this versus least accurate. And I've seen some weird things flying around, including, I should have grabbed this yesterday. I saw after the results had become clear, there was still somebody out there saying, well, the person who's really got this closest to right in terms of the chances of each of the candidates is Sam Wang. How could that be? Wasn't he the most optimistic of, I guess, what you would call optimistic? I guess it's not fair to call a numbers person optimistic or not. But, I mean, didn't he always have the highest percentage chance of a Clinton victory?
Yes, his was well over 98, 99%.
Yeah.
Even, and the Daily Kos was fairly optimistic.
Yeah,
that is
sure.
Drew Linzer's.
Absolutely.
And that was closer to 90, 91%.
And I always had my worries about that because,
by the way, both Sam and Drew
yeah.
did their data from state polling only. Had nothing to do with national polls.
Yeah. I mean, I understand, I guess, how they came to it. I should have grabbed the thing. All I really looked at was, is this being written now or is this from yesterday that Sam Wang is the most, I don't know how you would even write that yesterday before the election results came in, but I guess afterwards that's even harder to actually write. So I don't know. I'm not certain what people are trying to argue here. Then I also saw that someone was commenting that despite the fact that the LA Times poll, that weird experimental poll, did occasionally say, yeah, Trump can win, they still ended up being the least accurate somehow.
Right. Well, it was the furthest away from the actual number.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess everybody's just looking at top lines and saying, well, if you didn't say Trump was going to win, you were wrong, and if you did say it, then you were right, and there's a lot more to it than that.
Right. And again, if you're looking at those particular polls, then you're going to be looking at the national result, and the national result is essentially a tie.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So any poll that said 6 points is going to be 6 points away from where it is, and 5 points is going to be 5 points away from where it is in the other direction, which is where the LA Times was. So that's not necessarily the most accurate. And there was a fairly large polling error this year in that regard.
Yeah.
Just in terms of, where the vote actually wound up and what the numbers said they were going to be.
Yeah. Well, everybody's going to be down on the polling for quite a while. It's going to be interesting.
Right, and this is a case where the aggregates didn't necessarily help in terms of predicting who was going to win.
No.
If you looked at it and said, well, they did tell us the polls were tightening, that's true. They did.
Okay. I guess we can give them credit for that.
Yeah, but if you're going to look at it in terms of did big data really help us in that regard, the answer is no. And in fact, there was a comment from political consultant Mike Murphy, who's a Republican, who, like the rest of us, had fully expected a Clinton win. He said data died last night.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean,
if you're going to look at the whole thing in a big picture, that's really where that comes down. Again, I have to add, one of the smartest political consultants I know is Mark Murray, who, NBC political guy, data analyst. And what he tweeted last night, I feel like is true. He said, everything I thought I knew about presidential races from 2000, 2004, 2008, and 2012 turned out to be incorrect. The polls, the parties, turnout. All of it.
Okay. Well, that's...
So the people that missed, everybody missed.
I guess so, except for the people who didn't do any. This is the part that's really another one.
Right,
of the
you don't do anything,
trouble.
and then you come back and you say, "See, I told you." I don't know if that counts.
Yeah, and yet they will. I mean, I guarantee that'll be headlines for days, and it will be, the new political gurus, the people who really knew.
Personally, I think who missed and who didn't miss is, an interesting topic for approximately 10 minutes, and then, the really more important thing is. Why did this happen? And I think we need to spend a whole lot more time on that. We knew that if Clinton had won, the Republicans were going to have all sorts of major problems in terms of civil war and who's running the party and who's not. Well, it's pretty clear Trump is running the party.
Yes.
And they've got an authoritarian and an anti-Semite who, or at least tolerates anti-Semitism and everything else, white male dominance, as the people that are running the Republican Party in ways that go way, way beyond dog whistles. They have a result that's going to be endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan and white nationalists. And that's clearly what's happened to the Republicans. And then what happens to the Democrats?
Yeah.
The Democratic Party is just decimated by this.
Yeah. And then up until yesterday, it was the old standby line of Democrats, Dems in disarray, was a laugh line. and guess what?
Oh, when you win, sometimes it is, although there's always divisions that are papered over.
Yeah.
But now, Democrats are in disarray.
Yes, well,
the establishment has completely and totally lost. Everything that the establishment thought was going to happen did not happen.
Yeah. And it's an uncomfortable place, even whether you consider yourself an establishment a Democrat or, I guess, an establishment Republican.
Or even somebody who was on the left and wanted the establishment to do more, and in the primaries, perhaps, were hoping that they failed. Yeah. This is still an uncomfortable place.
Yes, and the disarray is, it's interesting. The disarray is, of course, sharpening as the morning rolled around, and I can't, we'll of course, I assume this will be relitigated for a million years among
forever, for the rest of our lives.
Right, and we're just never going to get past that, and I don't know whether it fades even when the next election ends up rolling around. But yeah, it's, like I said, it's a little uncomfortable and a little disturbing. Also, of course, I don't know. I mean, Democrats of all kinds lost last night, and I don't know how. Well, who knows? I don't know. I'll just say I don't know how helpful it is at this point to tell me. Well, for instance, if you tell me, well, Bernie Sanders would have won, and I say, how do you figure? And if you hand me a poll,
let's just point out, as Bree Newsom, Black Lives Matter activist, pointed out, if you think a Jewish president would have won, you missed what happened yesterday.
I think that's probably likely true. Yes, I mean, somebody said back to me, I was just trying to sort of gently put it out there yesterday. Okay, look, I don't know for sure. Obviously, I can't tell you. No. Bernie wouldn't have won. I don't know. But also, you don't know. And I know certainly as people began doing, well, here, look at this. There was the last time it was polled head to head, two-way race between Sanders and Trump. Sanders won. Well, I know, but last time it was polled head to head between Clinton and Trump, and that was yesterday. She won. The poll thing isn't going to do this. Surely there's more. And even though I've been offered all kinds of interesting answers, I don't know. I'm not so sure that I don't think you salvage yourself as a leader among Democrats to say, well, I recognized thus and such a kind of anger among Trump Republicans, and that that there's a similar strain among Democrats, and you didn't. I'm being offered, take a look at the arrogance of Democratic elites and the way they handled this and the way they handled the economy and international trade and all of these things. And then I remember, and I say, yes, these things all make sense to me, except for then I get done considering it. I close the book. I go and head out into the world and realize President Trump is the elitist elite of the elite has ever produced. This doesn't make any sense to me that you can tell me that, well, America was sick of the elite. I mean, I guess they're sick of the elite who pretend anything other than that they are not elite, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, it's really complicated, and that's where that identity politics and resentment comes in, because Trump is certainly the 1%, but as he'll be the first to tell you, he's not really the elite because they won't let him in.
Yeah, right. He's the ultimate outsider.
So it's also the ultimate politics of resentment.
Yeah.
Here's a quick tweet storm from Matt Stoller, which I thought was interesting. Yeah. And again, you've heard about Chris Arnott talking about what people outside of Washington were thinking. And he talks about it this way. In 2010, he says, I was working in the U.S. House. He was a staffer. Mm-hmm. And I got a call from a constituent who said, I have cancer. Where do I get my free Obamacare?
Yes.
She was so happy in 2010 that what she thought was free universal health care had passed. I remember other constituents calling, pleading with us to do something about the bank losing their mortgage paperwork. The story was standard. And partly I read this because, one of the things that, if you have to step back and say what was Obama's biggest mistake, we had this discussion on the show. Mm-hmm. And my contribution was more banksters didn't go to jail. So the story was standard, Matt writes. They had been ripped off in a subprime mortgage, tried a government program which had routed them back to their bank. While Dems rejoiced over all they had accomplished, voters struggled with Kafka in a box, losing homes and losing their lives. This is well understood, at least on the foreclosure piece. It's the chain of title election, which Diane wrote about. Mm-hmm. What did he say? How 3 ordinary Americans uncovered Wall Street's great foreclosure fraud.
Yes.
Right, and that's been immortalized in books and in movies, and that we get. Nobody in the White House would even say who designed the foreclosure program. Well, this was swept under the rug. I saw some same inattentiveness on the Puerto Rican legislation over the summer. 2010 had nothing to do with policy. 2004 had nothing to do with policy. 2014, these are losses for us. Mm-hmm. It's all just about polarization, endless talking points. The unreasonable rage was always there, too. The calls in 2010 from people furious that we would supplement state budgets for education. I don't know what happened yesterday, Matt writes, but I suspect the smugness, analytics, self-righteous blinded us for 8 years. Writing about the decay of the public at the hands of the elite is what made Chris Arnaud's work a must-read, and he talks about the same stuff we talked about in terms of quoting him several times. Thomas Frank's Listen Liberal, or Whatever Happened to the Party of the People, laid it out more fully. And this is all going to be relevant in terms of looking forward to what happens to the party, or whether there's a different party. This last 8 years has pushed me to dig deep into history. This is not just an electoral loss for the Democrats. It's the fall of an entire ideology constructed in the 1970s and 80s, which focused on technocracy and concentrating power. This ideology is worldwide, and it's held deeply among many political elites. And then he's got a piece here where he tries to explain it, how Democrats killed their populist soul. I wrote this in 2012, The Housing Crash and the End of American Citizen, on foreclosures and destabilization. He was right in the middle of that and certainly felt, very motivated to do that and saw that in terms of trying to do constituent service. Mm-hmm. And finishes and says, this is scary, there is no doubt, but you have to build a new world, and we've done that before. A little optimism there. So, the banksters should have gone to jail. And what happened with the crash in 2008 is still reverberating here, partly because we never properly dealt with it. And the entire world rise of populism and far-right parties is something that obviously we're not immune to.
Yes.
So it's all wrapped into the same thing, and then if you add to that the politics of resentment, and if you add to that the white lash, which was driven by white rural counties in just the right places to sway an election, and we have what we had yesterday.
Well.
And with that, I have to toddle off and have a very pleasant day.
Okay. Well,
I hope you do too.
Well, at least I got to laugh at it.
We knew the show was going to be like this.
Yeah. Well, okay. That's true. We did. It was a difficult thing to contemplate last night. I'm not even sure.
But I just, I hope this information is helpful in terms of trying to put the picture together and trying to figure out what's going on.
I guess
Major party rebuilding is needed. You cannot go forward with the party that you have right now. It didn't work yesterday, and it's not going to work in the future.
I guess not. I mean, if anything makes any sense, or there are
again,
rules
she won the popular vote.
Yeah.
So, like you were saying, in terms of whether it rained or whether it didn't rain, and that changes everything. But it didn't do what it needed to do.
Yes.
And it has to be considered a failure, even if she won the popular vote.
Yep. Pretty much. Okay. Well, you go ahead then.
Well, that's the good news.
Yes.
I mean, there's bad news.
Oh, all right. Good. Is there something else?
Well, when you think about it.
Oh, yeah.
You have the Republicans taking the White House.
Yes.
with an authoritarian fascist who really doesn't care for the job.
Right.
So now you have a shadow government doing whatever it is they want.
Oh.
And there's no checks and balances now.
Oh.
Because we don't have the Senate, we don't have the House, and they're going to put whoever they want on the Supreme Court.
Yes.
So what happened yesterday was a big deal, and the fact that you won the popular vote, like, so what?
I guess that's true.
And that's the part about it, I think, that bothers me the most.
Yeah. Well, there's so much.
I mean, this is America. I love my country. I love my countrymen, even when they make a huge mistake. But having an authoritarian in the White House with so few checks and balances, I personally find kind of scary.
Yes. I mean, combining authoritarianism with the exceptional gimmitarianism that he displays, it's going to be difficult. I mean, I had some discussions last night where, people, various, I guess, people looking to organize going forward and remake the party in a different image, and shouldn't you encouraging me to come along? And I guess I have to reevaluate exactly what can I do here. You don't need a rules guy now. There's no rules. Can't help you.
Yeah. And of course, the shock is going to have to take a while to wear off. That just doesn't go away in a day.
No. And it hasn't even been that yet.
But we'll be here. We'll be here to help you work through it.
Yes.
Was it your fault? Was it my fault?
Yes.
I suppose. How? I don't know. But that's not the point, really. It is what it is.
You have
we
to
got to figure out.
You'll never know, so I won't know.
Yeah.
No,
but we do have to figure out what we do going forward, and that's what we'll try and do.
Yes. Well, we'll see. And, I mean, wow, it's going to be difficult going forward, and it's going to be difficult to find. I'm going to have a difficult time deciding who I want to listen to in the repair work. I don't really have any good reason to take anybody's word for it at this point. You either lost. I mean, if you lost the general election, I'm mad at you. I don't want you organizing this thing. Well, what's the alternative? These guys over here had a totally different approach. I know, but you lost the primary election. I don't know if I'm happy with your work either. Well, we didn't. And I guess if it gets to we didn't lose it. It was rigged and stolen from us. You know what I mean? Hold on. I don't know.
There'll be new leadership emerging, but we're just gonna have to wait and see, who it is and how that happens. Yeah. All right. With that, I will get ready for tomorrow.
Okay.
It might be just as much fun.
Sure. It's been a thrill a minute.
Yeah. Let's see what the stock market does today.
Yes. Okay. Well,
as the world reacts.
Yes, I didn't catch up on that last night. As I was finally giving up and going to sleep, futures were down 800 points or something.
Yeah, something like that.
What is it now? Did you check the reality? What the opening's been like?
Well, it didn't crash immediately upon opening.
Okay. Neither did the internet.
Yeah, if that's any consolation whatsoever. So at the moment, it's relatively stable, and I think they're going to take a deep breath and see what happens.
I guess so. Or take all their money, anyway.
Yep. All right. Talk to you tomorrow.
Okay. Very good. Thanks a lot, Greg. We'll try this again tomorrow.
Okay. Take care.
All right. You do the same. Let's see. This morning, by the way, yesterday's Never Trumper Republicans say, hey, give Trump a chance. Ana Navarro, I see, in the Hill, saying, she voted Clinton, but give Trump a chance. Hey, it might work out. Mark Cuban, bazillionaire, says, hey, give Trump a chance. I don't see that we have very much choice one way or the other. On the other hand, the other moving parts in our puzzle, let's see. Geez, I was told, if you don't nominate my person, and I mean, I don't lay this on Bernie Sanders or Bernie Sanders supporters. A lot of people do. They do. I don't know if they should. I don't think so. I don't feel that way. I'm maybe just more generous, perhaps, than other people. I don't really know. I don't have a great deal of interest in exactly laying blame on things, but I do have there's a lot of caution in me. For instance, a lot of people have a lot of stories, and none of them seem to be the one that does it for me in terms of explaining the whole thing. It's the unifying theory of everything. I got a lot of unifying theories of everything being offered to me. But, for instance, I mean, as we were just discussing, the empathetic, you elites underestimated the genuineness of the anger across rural America, et cetera, whether it's Matt Stoller or Chris Arnott or any of the other theorists who've done it. I assure you they will kick your Harvard ass off the cliff just as quickly as they'd be happy to kick mine, no matter whether you say you recognize their legitimate anger or not. Part of the thing about governing from legitimate anger is it doesn't matter whether anybody agrees with you about your legitimate recognition. It's just you're going to be kicked off the cliff. That's what's that's what this is about. It doesn't make any difference if you empathize. I mean, it's always been one of the dangers, and I guess maybe that's one of the things that keeps me shying away from, at least engaging in the rhetoric of, well, there's going to be a revolution, man, is, as long as we're talking odds here, and we messed up with the odds the first time around, but the odds are you're going to get killed in this revolution regardless. You're going to revolt on the part of the downtrodden, the hardworking men and women of color in this country who have been broken and beaten by the oppressive white majority for so long. They're not going to ask for your CV. You're going to get killed in the revolution. And, maybe you could be okay with that. Sometimes I used to tell myself that, I would be pro this movement, even if it doesn't really, doesn't benefit me, but might actually hurt me, might actually kill me in some of this. But I guess here we are. We're stuck with it now, and we were told in no uncertain terms that this result was, one, inevitable when you didn't nominate Bernie Sanders or not. I mean, that was the guy that we had, so I don't want to lay it on him. He certainly didn't do this. But pick your candidate, fictional candidate, Bernie-like, let's say, and you believe that that's the guy that's going to do it, or that's the woman that's going to do it. If you're still capable of believing that a woman can win the presidency, I know a lot of people's belief in that took a hit last night. I don't know if that's it, but I will say, I guess because it's complicated, it's going to take a long time to sort that out, too. I mean, maybe it is. I mean, there's certainly a lot of people who, certainly a lot of outright misogynists out there, no doubt, and voting, and certainly a lot of people who don't even, in day-to-day engage in that kind of thought, but who just have sort of a casual misogyny and just say, I don't think a woman is up to the job or whatever, or maybe it's just the kind of women that are running. I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, women won in other races. There's clearly it's obviously no secret to anybody that you can win a Senate race this way or statewide office elsewhere. Governorships, we've had not a whole lot, but enough, obviously, to answer the question of whether or not a woman can win. But, there's still the argument, well, it's this kind, it's not that it's a woman, it's this kind of Democrat. And maybe that's all true. But I will say that the firmest believers in all of that very frequently also offered me, well, so much the better. Great. You've nominated Hillary Clinton. I can't stop you. I tried my best. I think that's dumb. I think you're going to lose. But the good news is that Trump, when he beats her, then finally we're going to see the revolution that's been so long and coming in this country. And maybe it's better. We're going to push the country so far to the right that there can't help but be a leftist revolution in this country. And I don't know. That sort of seems, you know what that makes me think of? That actually felt to me as weird and archaic as over the last couple of days, the the way thinking and writing and storytelling was going in, the narratives were going in the press, having to cover the Russia is doing it all story, the giant Russian conspiracy story. That felt as weird and archaic and wrong to me, though it may still be proven right. I don't know. One thing I think I've been fairly consistent about is I never know for sure what the hell's going on here. And I think we spend an awful lot of the show expressing a lot of self-doubt all the time. I think the chief feature of the show, although I will say that I did find out last night that many of the would-be leftist revolutionaries out there are pretty sure that I spent the entirety of the election cycle hippie punching. But maybe I was, was I blind to what I was doing? Does anybody have any idea what it might have been in particular? There were certainly times where I said, I don't have a great deal of confidence in the direction that Bernie Sanders or the Bernie Sanders supporters would like to take us. I don't think that that's necessarily the answer, although I see a lot of the appeal of it. But I don't know. My recollection is that I agonized for a long time. That I always sort of thought that I wanted somebody like Bernie Sanders to run for higher office, and I guess, that was always true. When he was in the House, I said, run for Senate. That'd be fantastic. Run for president. I sort of would like to just install a guy like that as president. That might be interesting. But roll the dice with him on the ticket, that, I don't know. I don't feel that much better about rolling the dice with Hillary Clinton on the ticket, but maybe just a little bit. Just a little bit. For a number of different reasons, a little bit better. Not the least of which was, and here I was, I guess, wrong. I thought that a key to winning a national election was going to be rolling into it with a highly organized party machinery. Even if everyone wasn't necessarily convinced of the rightness of the party machinery, that was going to be crucial to winning the presidency, because it always has been. And I mean, I guess as prominent in all of the prognostication of the presidential race as polls were, was also the insistence that field and ground game was everything. Well, it wasn't. So, big ding for polls, big ding for ground game. I had in pocket that I thought might have made a good piece for reading, either for the Monday show or the hypothetical Tuesday show that never came together, which was just merely a technical problem, by the way. I'm sorry about that. Sorry to have abandoned you to a rerun that only, I guess, in the end served to remind you how terrible this decision to allow Donald Trump to run the country it was likely to be, because we reread, of course, Swedish Jewfish's We All Knew About the Trafficking, the story of Trump, untold story of Trump model management, part 1. Part 2, by the way, still has not come out, and I wonder whether it really will. I guess that's my big worry, is that we never now get to the bottom of any of this stuff. But I guess it's no different from any other election. The allegations that are made, I'm always curious to know, are we ever going to find out the bottom line, real truth of this accusation or that story? And the election always ends before you really get to the bottom of it, and then people decide it doesn't matter anymore. And I guess there's perhaps more likelihood that the Trump stories get investigated down to the bottom now that he'll matter for at least the next 4 years. But then it may also come to be the case that you're not allowed to dig to the bottom of these stories anymore. We have yet to find out how autocratic the United States becomes. And I don't really I'm not ready to discuss that entirely because I think that's just too dark. Although you've all thought it, don't deny it, think on it, ponder it, look out for it, worry about it, do what you can to avoid it and prevent it from taking root. But yeah, it's there. Let's see. I guess I'll hold out this other possibility. This would be a slightly more optimistic possibility. I don't know, programming note, I don't know whether Joan McCarter is awake. She was, of course, up late, and has the responsibility, as I understand it, for following and tracking the results all the way through to the end on Senate results. And she may be losing her mind. She may be still asleep. She may be up, but say, the hell with this. I don't want to talk on the radio. I don't really know. So I can't promise exactly what's going to go on there, although maybe I'll get a note from her at some point, one way or the other. But I think as we left it last night, it was sort of like, well, it could happen. I might be able to make it onto the radio. But we're not going to hold her to it. There's extraordinary circumstances today. We have plenty to talk about as it is. I don't know what to do. I want to go back, I guess, and read through the rest of the strange piece that I had picked up right at the beginning of the show, the Tuesday Shouldn't Change the Narrative piece by Scott Alexander that we began reading just before Greg joined us, and that we reiterated one of the points later on in our discussion, that any number of pretty random events that don't really have anything to do with, well, human decision-making, political decision-making at all, like rainstorms, although that has to do with the human decision of whether or not I'm going to go vote, because I might get wet. So having a Hitler might be, better or worse than getting wet. So maybe I won't go. Okay, there's a human factor in everything. But yeah, it's entirely possible that we may be sitting here thinking that the entire future direction of human relations through popular government means at bottom X or Y based on, something that had nothing to do with it. A rainy day, a clear day, a cold front somewhere. Okay. So where were we with this one? Essentially, he summed up that the difference between a proof of nationalism's vigor versus proof of its impotence is really supposed to be about which candidate gets 47 versus 45%. That does seem a little strange when you put it that way. If a Trump victory tomorrow, which would be yesterday, would convince you that X is true, I suggest that you believe X is true regardless of whether or not Trump wins, because Trump's victory is almost certainly will depend more on noise than on X. I mean, I guess I should point out here, X gets you to the 45% range, and Y also gets you to the 45% range, and then somewhere in there, it might just be noise. If a Hillary victory tomorrow, that would have been yesterday, would convince you that Y is true, I suggest that you believe Y is true regardless of whether or not Hillary wins for the same reason. If there's some Z that you will believe only if Trump wins, but not if Hillary wins, then I suggest you seriously consider what thought process has led you to decide that you will flip your views on politics and society depending on whether or not there's a rainstorm or a 2% polling error or whatever. Instead, I suggest people pre-commit to their views on politics and society now. We're late because he meant 2 days ago. But okay, you can still do it. We live in a country and a world where Hillary can be at about 47% and Trump at about 45%. This is pretty much all you need to know. It suggests that a lot of people are willing to support a nationalist candidate and a lot of other people really hate that candidate. It suggests that political fundamentals are totally compatible with a situation where either Trump or Hillary could win based on noise in the electoral process. Let me suggest this, I guess. I guess it's a thought experiment. And because Trump compared his electoral prospects so frequently to the Brexit vote in England. Hey, Gideon, how you doing? I know you voted okay in that one. I'm not saying it's your fault. I'm just saying, hey, all of us who knocked you dummy British people for voting for Brexit, whoops. Anyway, so he compared it to the Brexit vote a lot, and that being a slightly different type of vote, it may happen that Britain gets either essentially gets a do-over or there's some relief valve that allows them to turn things around and not exit or do things differently. We don't have that now with this election, at least not immediately, and not for the foreseeable future. But, I mean, I think it's really largely the same thing in terms of the noise or that random event. If the random event here were magic, let's say, and that magic enabled us to reconsider, I wonder, I'm not sure what the outcome would be, and I guess that argues in favor of the earlier theory of, hey, it's evenly split between 45 and 47 for either one of them. If you have the vote over again, does it come out differently? Like literally over again, not exactly the same again, but you just tomorrow say, are you sure? The second time is going to count. Let's vote. Then, of course, people who say, to hell with it, I won't vote, come out and vote differently. By the way, footnote in my view, do the people who say I voted for Jill Stein or Gary Johnson say, to hell with that, I'm going to vote for, well, who knows who they're going to vote for? But I guess the thinking is the thinking that is interesting is people say, well, I'll vote for Hillary Clinton this time. Does that make a difference? I don't know. I mean, theoretically in Florida, I guess it does if every single one of them says, oh my God, and then Hillary wins Florida. But again, that's something. I'm not going there today. I have not been willing all along, really, to, I don't know what, to vote shame third-party voters. I should, maybe. People think so. Armando is going crazy now. He wants to, if he's listening to anything, I think he would have locked himself in the basement. But I'm sure if anything's going to make him call in, it would be that. I got to tell you, it's obvious. How can you deny it? The numbers are the numbers. I know what the numbers are. I just don't like telling people if you take the vote so seriously and you got to vote and, you got to express yourself and you got to do the right thing for the country. And it's hard for me to reconcile with also do the thing I want, not the thing you want. I know why I want that. Strategically, I want them to be there and I'll do everything I can to convince them of it. But, only up to a point where I just have never found that an easy thing to do, to tell somebody you're just dumb for voting for the person that you want. Even though I told Trump voters that, and I felt that was true, but certainly somebody who has any idea of entertaining a more left-leaning vote, and there's a lot of room to the left of Trump, than voting for Trump, I don't tell them, because I can understand that. I guess I understand why Trump voters vote for Trump. I read all the think pieces about it. I know. I don't feel it, but I know it. And that's the difference between them and me. They feel this and I don't, and we're on the wrong sides, the different sides. It's not going to work out between us. But as for third party, I don't think I really understand Gary Johnson voters. I think those guys are, generally speaking, right-leaners that I don't have the feelings that we don't share those thoughts and feelings. Well, Jill Stein voters, I mean, I don't know. I yell at them, but I don't think Jill Stein's vote really did that much either. I don't know. I've just never been a fan of blaming it on Nader, blaming it on Jill Stein when we could have done better or nominated somebody else or done a better job with the person we had or, made more sense of the world for people who thought that the Donald Trump view made the most sense when it really didn't. I don't know. But ultimately, I guess if it was up for do-over, it's entirely possible that there's enough, whatever you want to call it, a remorse of all kinds, that the vote comes out differently. Is it just the remorse? Is it also some other random factor? I don't know. But I thought this was a great underlying point, which is that essentially there was a coin toss of some kind that determined which direction we were going to go. And if there's a fully functioning political philosophy on one side and that other thing that looks like a functioning political philosophy, in my view, on the other side, and you toss a coin, and one or the other of them will inherit the country and be able to run it, I don't see that there's anything to place the blame on except the coin, and it's hard to blame a coin. I don't know. Maybe that's treating things too lightly. Okay, well, anyway, I'll finish up this particular article so we can get at least all of this guy's thoughts out for more discussion, even if our discussion isn't coherent. Right? He says, instead, I suggest people pre-commit to their views on politics and society now. We live in a country where it could have gone either way, right? It suggests that political fundamentals are totally compatible with a situation where either Trump or Hillary could win based on noise in the electoral process. Unless, parenthetically, he adds, the polls are totally wrong and one candidate somehow wins a 20 percentage point landslide or something. That didn't happen. It also suggests that both Weiner, you remember who we were talking about, and Adams, the Dilbert guy, were wrong to be so confident in their chosen solution. If either one is right, it will be mostly by luck. I feel like we said that. Weiner tells us to relax because Trump can never win, and maybe Trump doesn't win. But the fact is that even if Trump loses, we were one Hillary gaffe away from the opposite result and shouldn't have relaxed at all. Adams says there's been a 98% of a Trump win since last year. But the polls make it look a lot like Trump only has a chance at all because of the total coincidence of Hillary getting hit by a new FBI investigation 2 weeks before Election Day. I already count both Weiner and Adams as having been proven wrong regardless of what happens yesterday. He says, of course, tomorrow, any further praise or condemnation launched at one or the other after the election is just interpreting noise, or at least a signal so subtle that it might as well be. If both Weiner's extreme pro-Hillary prediction and Adams' extreme pro-Trump prediction are bad, what would a good prediction look like? That's a good question. In January of this year, I predicted, look at that, he likes his own prediction. I predicted that conditional on Trump winning the Republican primary, he would have a 20% chance of winning the election. Well, Trump won the Republican primary, and today, the day before the election, the prediction markets give Trump a winning percentage chance, I guess, at 17.9%. If Trump wins anyway, I'll have egg on my face and I'll look bad when I grade my prediction accuracy next year. But I don't think I would fundamentally update the way I think about America or the way I make predictions. Polling will be with you next time too. No prediction can account for every rainstorm. I think I got the fundamentals right, and if I end up losing on noise, I can at least take solace in knowing that is soon to be the least of our problems. That is some solace. You can put aside, you can forget about the error you made in the prediction game by focusing instead on the horrors of the new America. Hooray. And then an edit down at the bottom. I agree the election results can obviously change the future. Maybe if Trump wins, he'll enact nationalistic policy that will make people more nationalist. But the results shouldn't change our interpretation of existing trends. Well, what do you think? A lot of people thought a lot of things because there's 491 responses to this piece. And again, I don't think I've ever stumbled on this blog even once. Thanks again to Michael Musson for bringing it to my attention. There's no way I would have found this on my own, unless of course I found it the way I find everything, by looking at Twitter and seeing what you guys are talking about and following your links. So I guess I quote unquote, I would have found it that way by listening to you. Instead of having you specifically say, hey, this is really something that you need to pay attention to, you would have mentioned it casually and offhand. And I would have followed and said, hey, that does make sense. All right. So Does any of that help you? I don't know. I have this comment here. Let's see. Disaster Mouse, who said, "Hey, how you doing?" Who says, "You two, me and Greg, I guess, are responding with more insight than a lot of the Hillary left. I'm inspired." What do you know? I'm not really okay. That's good. I had hoped that there was more insight there than somebody. We were beating we were winning on the percentiles game, or we're at least in the upper 50th percentile or higher in terms of insight. That's all. It's a low bar, but it's all we can shoot for. Okay. Let's see. I don't know. We'll, I guess, at this point, open the door for Joan to come around if you're still up to it. She did send me a note that said, I'm awake. I'll be with you soon. So, we'll anticipate that and see if we can find out exactly what the hell's going to go on with the Senate. Of course, when I went to sleep, we had not won the Senate. And, Joan, bring me a Senate if it changed. Let me know. What does it mean for those of us interpreting election results in the future? I don't think any of you have missed the chance to read the tea leaves on that one. A minority once again in the Senate and a minority in the House as well. Republicans people who have attached the R to themselves will control all three of the elected branches. It's not really the case that the House and the Senate are branches, but they'll control the legislative branch in toto, the executive branch. That's, of course, the dangerous one. And soon enough, I guess, the judicial branch as well, as I assume the next Republican administration stocks the judiciary with nothing to stand in their way. And of course, if Democrats, and I assume that they would just try it at some point, just say, yeah, I mean, I guess we'll filibuster some of those justices and then make the Republicans say, all right, well, we'll do away with that last bit of the judicial filibuster anyway. And I guess eventually the legislative filibuster as necessary, if it becomes necessary. I guess the big question for the filibuster, in case you were waiting for me to address that one, is whether or not Donald Trump can be convinced, whether by someone else or by himself, that it makes strategic sense for him if he now begins to think ahead towards either winning a second term or putting fellow Republicans in a good position or his anointed successor in a good position to win the opportunity to run the next administration. I don't know whether he wants to run the country for more than 4 years. We'll have to see whether he enjoys it or not, or whether he's having a good time, or however he measures that, whether that's enriching himself or just getting his way or whatever, or being on TV a lot. So the question will be, does he want to play the political capital game? And does he find any particular advantage, if we believe about him what we have always told ourselves we believe about him, that he has no particular political agenda, he doesn't have plans for things, and there's certainly no evidence that he does. Does it make sense for him to simply say, well, the reason none of the things that I said I was going to do have happened, or only some of them have happened, or they haven't happened the way you thought, is Democrats are still standing in our way, filibustering everything. In other words, does it advantage him to be able to point to that and say, they're the ones screwing me up, even though the rest of the world will know, well, that's something you can get rid of. You can brush that aside. And I guess if he runs into something that he absolutely, for whatever reason, is just like, I have got to have this done, and it's got to be done this way, and it should be legislated, and I want it to happen, and I want the legitimacy of having the Congress vote to approve this thing, and not just impose it by executive order or whatever, then then he demands it. He demands it of the Senate, and I think probably the Senate complies and they get rid of the filibuster. But I have a feeling that he might at some point prefer to be able to hide behind the excuse of democratic obstructionism. And if you think that's absurd and nobody will buy it, or that his base would become angered by it, I don't know what to tell you. They have their own news websites and they make up news and they just act based on that. I guess one of the things I haven't mentioned yet, one of the things that I found most disturbing about last night isn't so much that Donald Trump, who is a vicious jackass and jerk and an idiot, largely, wins the election. That happens all the time. Idiot, jackass, jerks that don't know anything and aren't very smart win a lot of elections. That's what we do in this country. We give them away to those guys. What worried me more is that I don't know how we're going to get anything real to happen in this country, or whether anything real will happen in this country, or how we're going to deal with other countries in any context, because the people who supported Trump did so in large part because they read news that wasn't true, that told them things that wasn't true, that gave them premises that weren't true, that gave them facts that weren't true, and they voted based on those things and in favor of those things. So I suppose, what do you do if President Trump decides he wants XYZ to happen, but not that much? He's just sort of, this would be good. This is my preference. I want to win. I always want to win, etc. We propose it. It gets filibustered in the Senate, and it's getting blocked. At that point, I don't know why the right-wing news feed just doesn't say either. If they were to just tell people, well, it's not happening because of democratic obstructionism, and there's nothing we can do about it, I don't know why they would read that and say, now I no longer believe, now I take the news with a grain of salt. They would just say, oh, that's the reality of things. Things get filibustered, and you can't change that. Even though they would have just elected, they probably would just have voted for a Senate candidate based on being filled to the eyebrows with rage stoked over Democrats having changed the filibuster rules, perhaps. And a week later, could they be convinced to forget all of that and to believe that the filibuster rules can't be changed? Sure. I'll write the article for you. You run it in Breitbart. That's it. That's news. That's the way it is. I know I felt differently last week somehow, but then again, I'm just so euphoric about having won. I don't know. I guess I misunderstood all of that. Anyway, back to work. So I don't know. I can't tell you for sure whether or not Republicans simply say, we want to be rid of the filibuster once and for all. And of course, if that happens, sorry about teaching them how to do that, except that they already knew and had plans to do it, and we just beat them to it, and now they're going to finish the job. So I guess you could save that email. I didn't invent this process. I simply reminded people that Republicans had written their plan, that this was something that they were going to do, and then they didn't get around to doing it, and that they were likely to do it next time. And in the meantime, if you would like to possibly do something in between now and the next time they take over, why don't we execute part of their plan for them, do some of these things and see if it helps. And it turns out it didn't. We're going to hand things over to the Republicans nonetheless. But, I didn't do it. However, it was fun to teach people to read those articles that already existed and to use it to their advantage at least once. I'm glad we got a chance to try it once, and some of these judges, I assume, will even be allowed to finish their terms before being, who knows, purged by the Trump-Pence administration in the great judicial purge of 2018, yet to come. All right. Well, anyway, with that in mind, Joan McCarter joins us this morning. Hey, Joan, are you tired? Yeah, a little bit.
Hey, Kagro. Yes.
Hi.
Yes.
Okay.
Very tired.
I can imagine. Did you sleep at all? I guess a little bit. But
A little bit.
Okay.
A little bit.
Well,
Yeah.
nice. They say you should do that.
The Senate is lost to
Yes.
Democrats.
Mm-hmm. We started out with it, lost, but okay. We lost
yeah.
again.
We gained Mark Kirk's seat.
Yes.
We retained Harry Reid's seat. We're still waiting to see what happens in New Hampshire. It's very, very close.
Yeah.
Something like 900 votes with Maggie Hassan in the lead last I saw.
Okay.
So we'll know that by the end of today, provided they don't have to go into recount.
Well, what's the recount situation and the legal recount situation in New Hampshire?
I have not looked it up.
Oh.
I do not know.
Okay. Not your responsibility just yet. They know what it is. They'll let us know. But okay, so just tracking it. Yeah, so not
it didn't seem to be that critical since the Senate's gone anyway.
Yeah.
To figure out all of that.
Yeah. So okay, well that is.
But it's still a very tight Senate.
Yeah. So
it'll either be 40. Well, Louisiana is still uncalled because they have to go to the runoff next month.
Thanks, Louisiana.
So it'll either be 47-53 or 48-52.
48-52. Okay. Well, that is pretty close. Just before finally giving up and going to sleep last night, I saw, I guess the rumor mill began, and Joe Manchin's name comes up. Somehow the Hill gets wind of a story. So he's thinking of switching parties, either no matter what, or if the Senate were to come up tied 50-50. It took about an hour to get a revised story out in the Hill with a denial from Joe Manchin.
Yes.
So I guess we still stand there on the denial. I mean, it doesn't make any difference for him to switch now.
No, it wouldn't make any difference. I think that we probably do see an end to the filibuster. Mm-hmm. That's going to be my guess because they're going to want to get through their Obamacare repeal. They're going to want to get through their judges.
Yeah.
Supreme Court justices. They're going to want to get through all of these things. So unless, they decide that Trump is just too dangerous for them.
That would be new for them to decide that now, but I guess it's possible.
Yeah.
And there always was that sort of that rumor that, well, okay, we'll wait and see what happens, and then even if we do believe that Trump's too dangerous, then we just simply in the lame duck session quickly turn to the Garland nomination and close that door, at least for the time being. But
not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that was always a long, long, long shot, and very few Republican senators even entertained that possibility aloud. And they were never Trumpers as it was. So those guys didn't really win the day. So I don't know that they're going to call that shot. It would be a very big surprise if they decided to do something like that. And that would make trouble for them that they likely do not need at a time when they should, I'm sure, that they feel like they should be keeping their heads down. There's going to be a lot of this whole thing it's going to be a very awkward period for Republicans as well. There's a lot of people who are going to have to make amends with a new administration and try and explain themselves as even if they never were outright never Trumpers. A lot of people have to explain themselves to Trump fans in the next couple of weeks, even if they campaigned for Trump and openly said that they were voting for him. There's a lot of people who have to answer for, well, I don't think he's qualified. I would never say give him as a role model, but I'm voting for him, but I'm not endorsing him. I mean, I'm not sure how strictly the rules are going to be enforced against these guys. It may be that the Team Trump is happy to take facile flip-flops and confessions of, or I was just kidding, or, I only said that because I thought there was a chance that something like, what do you do with the Jason Chaffitzes of the world now? Even the Kelly Ayatts who were so wishy-washy the whole time, and who now are hoping against hope that they can make it back into the Senate, and then if they do, face a Trump who, from all indications, the way he conducted himself throughout the campaign is that he's going to be angry and at least demand some kind of, almost some sort of, fealty ceremony. They're going to have to come and kiss he's going to have to go get a ring for them to kiss.
Yeah. I think a lot of them were approaching this on the assumption that if Trump won, they'd be in control. I think Ryan and McConnell both probably think, oh, we got this.
They might.
He doesn't care about all of this governing stuff. He's gonna just ignore it and let us do our thing. I wouldn't bet on it if I were them.
There's not a lot I would bet on at this point, and not a lot of money left to bet with. And might have to hoard it in cash and bury it in coffee cans in the backyard or something. But
or invest in private prison stock. That seems to be the only thing that's trending upward today.
Really? Okay. Yeah. Well, I did see somebody mention that on Twitter. Although, I got the sense as to why that would be mentioned, but I'm not even certain that I don't know. I mean, unless it's for us. Which is possible.
Journalists.
Yeah.
People on their way to being deported.
Yes, right. There's certainly, now that's the actual, legitimate answer of what what the private prison folks think they're going to profit from is, I assume, the deportation staging.
I think so, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is really not something to even joke about.
No, well, that's not a joke. They absolutely see that there's money to be made from that. There's 11 million people whose lives are at stake this way, and if you just do the cold calculation of it, and I guess that's what they're going to do now, you got to be able to put them somewhere. We were, I guess, when it was still in the joke stage way back when, people at least. I mean, they weren't even really joking then. They were just saying, look at the logistics of this. This can't be done.
Well, here's the part of it. It can't be done. It's going to be hugely expensive. He wants tax cuts.
Yeah.
How are they going to build the wall? Is he going to be able to build the wall when the Freedom Caucus is not going to give him any money to spend on building the wall? Or will they decide that this is something that they can spend money on? Will deporting millions and millions of people be something that they can decide they can spend money on?
I guess I would think that they would say so, yeah. Just that gimmitarian streak. It doesn't matter that it costs too much. That's just never really been an interest of theirs.
They'll take the money from Medicaid.
Yeah.
It is pretty terrifying to think about the things that can come down. Obamacare might actually be more of a fight than they thought they had. I don't know that now that the insurance companies have ramped up, have created all of these new systems, have all of these new customers, they're going to go quietly into the night and let that be dismantled.
Yeah.
But there are some things. The Medicaid block granting.
Yes.
The defunding of Planned Parenthood. There's a lot on the healthcare side that could be devastating. Whether they decide that they want to go after Social Security, I'm not so sure. That's still the third rail. That's still very, very dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, even Trump has been.
Trump said he wasn't all that interested in doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that's actually part of my thinking about or musing about the filibuster idea, that they may find that there's some strategic value to saying we can't yet take care of that because democratic obstructionism, which is
Right.
just a great idea if you repeal
Right, that
or
would be
replace
the
with
one
what?
thing in maintaining it. I think
Yeah.
we might see something that happened like Harry Reid did. Okay, get rid of it for Supreme Court justices, keep it for legislation. So that they do have some kind of check on Trump.
Yeah. Or
a check on the House maniacs, or a check on their own worst natures.
Yeah.
The other thing
worse an excuse.
that's difficult for us is that the 2018 map for McConnell looks much better than this year's even. So
Yeah. That's also, that's another gigantic disappointment in all of this is for how many years we've been saying that map is terrible for them. They're going to be destroyed no matter what. Almost impossible for them to hold. And then, of course, as things got closer, it's a little more dicey than that, but still a pretty good chance that there'll be a Democratic takeover. And then if
no one predicted Trump.
A net one.
Yeah.
That's not so good.
Yeah, and, an important one.
Yes, that's true. And, I'm glad of that one, obviously. I mean, I was happy enough to say yesterday that, Mark Kirk wins the ex-Senator of the Year award. That's been a long time coming. But
it has.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know. So
margins were close enough everywhere that I'm not in any mood or in any. I haven't had enough sleep to do the dissecting of all of this to figure out where we should have put more effort, whether we should have tried to put more effort, whether more money to Patrick Murphy may have closed the margin in Florida. I don't know any of this yet.
Yes, no one.
It wasn't a blowout.
No, it wasn't. It was, like we've kind of been theorizing as, you sometimes do get a bad streak of coin tosses at random, and if you need to toss 6 coins, it's not that infrequent that you'll get 5 heads and 1 tails.
Yeah.
It's a little more frequent than getting 6 heads and 0 tails, and a little slightly less frequent than getting 4 and 2. And, although, the expected value will be 3 and 3, 5 and 1 happens, and it happens a lot. Try it tonight. Yeah. Lost my train of thought there a bit. There's a lot to think about going forward that we need to be working on. There's a lot for, say Chief Justice John Roberts to be mulling over. Yes.
Today, thinking about the future of his court.
Yeah, I wonder. I do wonder what's going on there. About these things.
He's a Chamber of Commerce guy.
Yes. Well, so
he's a business guy, all of whom are freaking out about the rest of us. Mm-hmm. About as much, rather, as the rest of us. Is John Roberts going to want to go whole hog on all of the social stuff that these guys have promised? Is he going to be the Chief Justice that finally completely puts the nail in the coffin of the Voting Rights Act? Is John Roberts going to want to be the guy responsible for making sure that millions and millions and millions of people around the country don't have the franchise? I still think we've seen Roberts think a lot about his legacy in things like the marriage equality vote and not completely killing Obamacare. So this puts him in kind of an interesting position. Yeah.
Well, it will be interesting for him to see how he decides or how he evaluates these things. We'll never find out how he evaluates them, but if he's the kind of guy, and it's always been a little difficult for me to even think of him in terms of pondering his legacy, because truth be told, there's not even a whole lot of even chief justices whose legacies are recognized and acknowledged by the average citizen. We have this vague idea of what the court is and what it does. And I mean, honestly, I guess if you're watching late night television, you'll realize pretty quickly that nobody has any idea who he is or who the Chief Justice is, what his name is, what he looks like, what he's done, nothing like that. And even those great chiefs of the past whose legacies most people who are informed would say are undisputed are not recognized by most people either.
Right, but that doesn't matter to Supreme Court justices
they
and
certainly
chiefs.
think of themselves as having that legacy. And so then my question becomes, if we assume that he believes in there being such a thing as a legacy of a Chief Justice, and I think he'd have a hard time getting up and going to work every day if he didn't. But it's not a bad job. Most people would take it. I wonder whether or how you come to any conclusion other than in the shadow of Donald Trump being cooperating with a Trump administration and facilitating a Trump administration. There's no legacy in that. That's just adding to Donald Trump's legacy, I suppose. You could argue with him and say, on the other hand, Trump wins. They've swept away the possibility of a Democratic Senate, held on to the House. There's literally now nothing stopping Trump pretty much for getting his way on almost anything that he would demand his way on.
Yeah.
That's going to be the Trump legacy. The only thing that can possibly stop it, and he may yet try to steamroller this too, but you'd at least be able to put up a fight from here for a while, is the Supreme Court. The legacy, if there's going to be a legacy other than a footnote in the Donald Trump legacy, it's holding the line on something important, if not everything important, in the Supreme Court.
Right.
So now it's just a question of, is he just collecting a paycheck or is he trying to build a legacy? And does he see the possibility of building a legacy as a collaborator somehow? I don't see how it gets done.
Or a check on.
Yeah. I think the only way to make a legacy would be to be a check on.
Well, yeah.
Unless he thinks, unless the Congressional or the Presidential Medal of Freedom is enough of a legacy for him, in which case, that's it. That's his legacy. He decides everything Trump's way, collects a nice medal. It doesn't come with any money, so don't know if it's a big legacy, but people have had stranger ideas.
And in the meantime, I have gotten a note from my managing editor to say Governor Hassan has declared victory over Kelly Ayotte in the U.S. Senate race.
Okay. That is good.
Yeah.
I'll take that. I'm glad you got that.
I can live without Kelly Ayotte.
Yeah. Right. And I think, I sort of wonder whether she's relieved almost. I don't know. I mean, you want to win, obviously, but.
Some of these people are just, who've not been able to utter Trump's name.
Yeah.
Now won't have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So there's that.
Yeah. There were a couple of people, and now I can't bring the names to mind, who I guess Trump spent a little time last night sort of hinting like, you're in trouble, Republicans, you're in trouble with me when I get there. And do you recall who that was?
I don't.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, he should, but gosh, there was a lot going on last night. But yeah.
He's Graham? Lindsey Graham?
Yes, Lindsey Graham.
I don't remember the other one.
Oh, now I remember the context of it, too, which is also horrifying in and of itself, which was the news that the Trump camp spent a good portion of the night last night drawing up the final entries to their official enemies list.
Oh, good.
That's what it was. And one, that's bad in itself. Two, perhaps even more outrageous and horrifying is that the news came from Omarosa Manigault, who is actually a figure in, I guess, what will become the Donald Trump administration, which is amazing in itself, because what in the world is she doing in the middle of all this? And it's just Donald Trump just brings people along who say good things about Donald Trump, and he makes them important where he is important. And she singled out Lindsey Graham in all this after Graham announced on Twitter that he had voted for Evan McMullin, which...
Right.
Okay.
As did Mike Lee.
Yeah? Oh, that will be interesting.
Yeah.
Well, that depending on how Donald feels about these things, he may very well go ahead and end up nominating him for the Supreme Court anyway and saying, see, I can be reasoned with. I knew he voted for McMullin. I value independent-minded senators so long as they're strict constitutionalists. And then people will say, what a magnanimous leader he is. And and say other things about him that make you think he's been elected king. But, well, that'll be interesting to see too, and what kind of enemies list it is, and how far down the line does it go, and what do they do about it. But yeah, the former contestants from his reality show apparently are in a position to be compiling and maintaining official enemies lists on election night, no less. So you can feel good about the expertise coming into the White House in the coming weeks. Chris Christie.
This cabinet.
Yeah.
Chris Christie, Trump's going to be going to court on fraud charges.
Yes.
Next month,
presumably.
Right? So he's not going to care if
so they claim
an indicted co-conspirator, Chris Christie, is in his cabinet. He'll be fine with that.
That's one of the things I'm curious to find out. We just have to wait and see. Does Chris Christie get to keep his transition chief job? And my guess is sure. Why not?
Yeah.
You were loyal to me. Some people they got convicted. Good. They're gone now, and you don't have to worry about them. Now you don't have to worry about whether or not you can give Baroni and Kelly jobs in the administration. The answer is no, you can't.
Right.
You can give yourself one, though. And, what a day for Chris Christie from casting a almost secret vote before dawn to, hey, I'm the transition chief. What do you know? Yeah, that was some picture. I thought things were going to go differently after that. But they did not.
They did not.
All right. Well, I mean, I don't know. We at this point, like you say, we just have to wait and see. I'm glad we were able to be on hand and have you here live for the New Hampshire call. I don't know that Ayat
I haven't seen an actual call yet.
Yeah, she just claims it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we'll caution everybody with that. That's true. It's good news because usually they don't just do that for the hell of it.
No, they're usually pretty cautious about it.
Took her this long.
Yeah.
Okay, so you'll have to keep an eye on that.
Keep an eye on that. We're going to have a statement from President Obama in about an hour and a half.
Yes,
and
okay, good.
We'll be bringing that to you on the front page now. We're about to bring Hillary Clinton's concession speech.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, that's the reality of it. And, I guess you can take some comfort in the fact that, were the shoe on the other foot, there are I guess, unfortunately, the press that will be actually running things in the United States for some time probably wouldn't have carried any, if he had even made a concession speech at all. But to the extent that it's important to you to cover the actual events of the day truthfully, we're still here for the time being. So we'll take care of that. Okay. Man, I don't know. So I don't know what else to do at this point. I just sort of wanted to check in and hear your voice, really. That was it. And get the news. And, I don't think there's too much good stuff we're going to be able to wring out of this at this moment. Nobody knows what's happening except waiting on counts at this point.
Waiting on counts. And by the way, CNN made sure they put out there that they have not yet made a projection in each sense. So,
okay.
We'll see.
Yeah. I guess that's
why,
it.
why, by the way, does it take New Hampshire so long to count votes?
I don't.
There's not that many people there.
Yeah. They should just convene the state legislature and divide it up.
Right.
And give everybody some ballots to count. They should be done in an hour. Everybody's.
I wouldn't trust those people to do it.
Well, that's yeah. Well, that's a different story. But certainly, I mean, if you gave every member of the state legislature their block, the block you live on, count your neighbors' votes, that would be done pretty quickly because there's 400,000 of them.
Yep.
So, I don't know. Not sure why it does do that. I assume it's just, old style infrastructure and the fact that, there's a new municipality every 10 feet in our eastern states. And we just have larger, bigger jurisdictions the further west you go. And I guess they've got some economies of scale going. I don't know.
I guess.
I don't know. And then when it's this close, of course, you got to count and count again. So
there is that.
Well, we've never really solved that issue of how to count these things and how to figure it out to do it more efficiently and in a way that makes everybody believe that that's the actual result either. We're going to have a lot of people insisting that somehow it wasn't the actual result in the next couple of weeks, and I'll tell you.
Well,
I mean,
there's still the issue that she won the popular vote.
Yes, well, there is that. It's
a lot like the situation we always have had in the House since they resorted to gerrymandering because of the Electoral College. The person who won the popular vote is not going to be president, as with House of Representative, which always wins the popular vote, Democrats, but are not in the majority.
Right. So, well, as our next president, Donald Trump, once said, the Electoral College is a disaster for democracy.
Yes, he did.
So he's right from time to time, I guess, if you believe that. Although I will say, even for all the people who have been enthusiastic about, for whatever reason, preserving the Electoral College, whether it's tradition or the weird mythical belief that it will stop a populist demagogue one day, I guess.
So much for that.
Yeah, well, it had its chance. Yeah. And I guess, what are you going to do? You won't need it anymore, but good luck getting rid of it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I don't know. We'll wrap things up, and by next week, perhaps we'll have our feet under us a little bit better. Perhaps. I'm not going to count on it. Well, don't bet on anything. If I told you there was a 95% that chance that was going to be true, you wouldn't believe me now. No, I wouldn't. See? Okay. Well, we're all skeptics now, and we'll become better mathematicians in the future. All right. Thank you, Joan. We'll talk to you again, and we'll speak in back channels in the hours and days to come too, and we will prop each other up. Okay. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Take care. Well, that's a hell of a job there too. Of course, rounding things up and putting them, writing it all down and letting you guys read it over at the Daily Kos. It's going to be putting a strain on a lot of people. Yes. Coming to the end of the show. But yes, it's true. Omarosa Manigault, according to The Hill, was in fact out last night. Just so I can sum that up and you can have a direct quote here. She was quoted as saying, "It's so great our enemies are making themselves clear so that when we get into the White House, we know where we stand," the former Apprentice contestant told the Independent Journal Review. By the way, I didn't watch The Apprentice. Did Omarosa win? Even? I don't think she even won. But I don't really know. My memory is that she made it very far, but then didn't win. But I don't know whether that is the sort of thing that makes a big difference in Apprentice world or not. Anyway, she singled out Lindsey Graham. Is there anyone else? Let's see. Not really. Aides for Hillary Clinton, it is said, kept a hit list of politicians that she felt she had wronged her, I guess, during the 2008 election. But I don't know what became of that. And it's certainly not something that they were very happy about going out and telling the press, yes, we've got one, and you're on it. and I'm in charge of running it. It was a little bit more under the table than all of that. Okay, so what else will we round up in the coming days? There will be, of course, much more, and we'll be checking in with the journalists who will be sort of taking us into the Trump future. We'll perhaps muse a little bit on what might become of David Farenthold and his investigation. Does that just stop? Was it going to stop anyway? Did we hit the wall and just decide, yeah, the truth is the guy doesn't actually give personal money to charity, but there it is? I don't know. What do we do with a lot of the things that have been ongoing? We've never seen, still haven't seen Donald Trump's taxes. Will we ever? Would there be any reason to? Or does he wait now? What do we do with this? Suppose he comes in, inherits the government, establishes our Donald Trump administration. The IRS, of course, supposedly, theoretically an independent agency of sorts, but of course under the sway of the president. Wouldn't that be something if he finally does get around to releasing those taxes, only for us to find that for whatever reason, we hadn't heard anything about this before, but as it turns out, he's actually owed a gigantic $4 trillion refund in taxes, and he'll take that in cash or check because he believes in the integrity of the United States Treasury. And could we please pay up now? Wouldn't that be an interesting way of simply looting the entire Treasury and piling it into your own account, and then say, I'm kind of done with what I wanted to do at this point, and I haven't really got many more ideas about things I'd like to get accomplished. Let's repeal this Obamacare thing and then replace it with the exact same thing, let's say, the popular parts of it anyway, and just call it Trump Care. I'm not certain that, by the way, isn't the actual outcome that they have in mind with this. And as people, even who are Trump supporters, begin to worry, geez, I have pre-existing conditions, I'm diabetic or what have you, and I really actually have something to lose in all of this, I'm sure Donald Trump would be very happy to simply hand you back the same package you got, which was, after all, as we were constantly reminding ourselves, a Heritage Foundation package, and simply call it Trump Care and tell you it's better than Obamacare was or ever could have been. And if Breitbart says that's true too, and the Macedonians are willing to tell the rest of us who get our news from the internet that that's true, well, then that's true. There are a number of things on which we were all just pre-wrong, and we'll find out later on. Oh, yes, by the way, I got to comb through my own tweets, and that's probably how we'll spend the bulk of tomorrow, too, just to remind you of all the fun things I thought of last night, like, hey, torture's legal. Isn't that great? At least we have that going for us. We were pre-wrong on that, just as we once supposed we were. Anyway, what's coming up next? What are they going to even round up on the after show? I'll tell you a little bit about that. Let's see. Campaign staff say the election is proof that Trump voters don't care what the political elite media class agrees is racist. Dutch extremist Geert Wilders expects Trump's win to boost Europe's racist right, and Russia revels in Trump's victory as Putin is set to fully restore ties with the United States. There's more to come on the last half, of course, and I'll tell you a little bit about what that is right after this.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
What about the rest of Europe? German car makers are concerned that a Trump United States could damage international trade. Of course it could. And how have we failed America? Let us count the ways. It'll be their version of What the Hell? Coming up next on the After Show with Wink and Justice. We will be back tomorrow.